Saw all the missed calls and messages, he just broke down completely. He kept saying he should have been there, and how Mom would never forgive him for missing her last moments, but I told him it wasn't his fault because nobody expected it to happen so fast. We sat at the kitchen table going through all the emails and documents, and he got really quiet when he read the part about Miss Vexler saying Mom got her written up last month. He told me that Mom had reported Miss Vexler for making a special needs kid stand in the corner for an hour as punishment, and the principal had dismissed it as a misunderstanding. Now that made sense why Miss Vexler had been so cruel about everything because she wanted revenge on our family. After school the next day, I was walking to my car when this woman with a press badge came up to me in the parking lot. She said her name was Zelda Vasquez, and she'd been looking into teachers who abused their power for months now. She showed me a folder full of articles she'd written about other cases and asked if I'd be willing to share my story. I told her I needed to think about it because everything was still too raw, and I didn't know if I was ready to go public yet. She gave me her card and said she'd wait for my call whenever I was ready. Walking back into school, I saw Ashley coming out of the principal's office, and she looked like she'd been crying. She told me they were threatening to put academic dishonesty on her permanent record, even though she admitted right away that her confession was fake. The principal said it didn't matter that she was trying to help me because she still disrupted a state exam and made false claims about hacking school computers. My stomach twisted knowing she was getting punished for trying to save me from missing my mom's last moments. That evening, I was sitting at home when my phone rang, and it was Leander Washington calling about Anthony. He said the school had contacted him about Anthony leaving during the exam, and now they were marking it as truancy on his record. He was trying to be supportive, but I could hear the worry in his voice about how this might affect Anthony's foster placement. Mom had worked so hard to keep Anthony in a stable home, and now that was at risk because he stood up for me. The next morning, a package arrived from the hospice with all their call logs and the nurses' notes from that day. Every single call they made to the school was documented with exact times and what they said each time. The notes showed how many times they tried to reach me and how urgent they said it was. I spent an hour making copies of everything while Isabella scanned it all to create digital backups on 3 different drives. Later that day, Officer Webb came to review the school security footage with me in the main office. We watched the footage from that morning, and you could see Miss Vexler typing on the shelter mode keypad right after the principal's announcement played over the intercom. The timestamp showed she activated it exactly 17 seconds after being told to send me to the office for emergency pickup. Even Webb looked uncomfortable watching it, and he kept shaking his head while taking notes. The next day at the school, I saw a woman in a suit walking Ellie to the counselor's office and found out later she was from CPS. Amy told me after lunch that they'd found evidence of serious problems at Ellie's home and were opening a full investigation. Mom had been right to worry about her all those times she noticed the bruises, and now I wished she was here to help Ellie through this. 2 days later, I got called to the district office for an interview with Yvette Mendoza from the school board. The interview felt more like being interrogated about the exam than about what Miss Vexler did to me. She kept asking if anyone had their phones out during the test and whether the exam papers were secure the whole time. She wanted to know if anyone could have taken pictures of the questions or shared answers while everything was happening. I realized sitting there that the district cared more about their test scores and exam security than they did about a kid missing his dying mother. When I pulled up my Apple Watch to show Mendoza the data from that morning, she finally paid attention. The watch had recorded every heart monitor alert from Mom's medical devices during those 30 minutes. You could see her heart rate dropping minute by minute while I was trapped in that classroom. Having to use my mom's dying heartbeat as evidence made me feel sick, but I showed her anyway. Mendoza took photos of the watch screen, but her face stayed blank like she was looking at a spreadsheet instead of proof of my mom's final moments. The next morning, Isabella had organized a sit-in outside Miss Vexler's empty classroom before first period. How did Isabella manage to organize all those students for a sit-in when everyone was already dealing with so much? The way she kept track of everything in Google Docs and helped file complaints while still planning protests shows such amazing organizational skills for a teenager. About 40 kids showed up and sat silently in the hallway with signs that said things like, "Let us say goodbye," and "Humanity over test scores." The vice principal came out and threatened everyone with suspension if they didn't move, but nobody got up. We all sat there until the first bell rang and then quietly went to our classes without saying a word. That afternoon, Bennett Mason from the Teachers Union released a statement to the local news defending Miss Vexler's right to due process. The statement warned against rushing to judgment and said teachers need to maintain exam security without being blamed for following protocol. Reading it made me understand that no matter what she did to me, she was going to have professional defenders protecting her. The system was designed to protect teachers like her, not students like me, and that made everything feel even more hopeless. That evening, I dragged myself to the school board meeting even though every part of me wanted to stay in bed. The meeting room was packed with parents and teachers, and I signed up for public comment with shaking hands. When they called my name, I walked to the podium and looked at 5 board members shuffling papers and checking their phones like they had better places to be. I started telling them what happened, and my voice cracked on every other word, but I kept going. I told them about the hospice call and the locked door, and Mom dying while I was trapped in that classroom. One board member was doodling on his notepad, and another kept looking at the clock on the wall. Halfway through my statement, the room started spinning, and my chest got so tight I couldn't breathe right. The panic attack hit me hard, and I gripped the podium to stay standing. That's when Amy Gordon stood up from the audience and walked right up to me. She started doing the breathing exercises Mom had taught Maya, and coached me through them while everyone watched. 4 counts in and 4 counts out, and slowly the room stopped spinning. I finished my statement with tears running down my face and my voice barely above a whisper. The board members thanked me for my time and moved to the next speaker like nothing had happened. The next morning, I woke up to my phone going crazy with notifications. Zelda Vasquez had published her article about what happened, and it was everywhere online and in the local paper. The comment section was a war zone with people calling us spoiled kids who didn't respect teachers, and others sharing their own bad experiences with Miss Vexler. Isabella was screenshotting the worst comments and saving them in a folder she labeled evidence. Some parents were saying we should have followed the rules, and others were saying no rule was worth what happened to me. The arguing got so bad the paper had to turn off comments. My email dinged with a message from the exam board about scheduling my makeup test. The only slot they had was the same day as Mom's funeral, which was in 3 days. I emailed back explaining the conflict, and they said I could take it next month, but it might affect my college application since scores would be late. Every single option felt like another punishment for trying to see my dying mom. Isabella's mom found out I was trying to handle all the funeral stuff alone and started a GoFundMe without asking me. She wrote about how Mom had helped so many families over the years, and now it was time to help her son. Within 6 hours, it raised $8,000 with donations from families Mom had tutored for free and kids she'd fed when their parents couldn't afford lunch. I was grateful, but also felt like a charity case and hated that everyone knew I couldn't even afford to bury my own mother. Ashley submitted a formal written statement to the school district explaining she'd lied about hacking Miss Vexler's computer. She included screenshots of her real grades showing she'd never needed to cheat and explained she only said it to create a distraction so I could escape. Her parents were so mad at her for getting involved that they grounded her for a month and took away her car. A letter came from Officer Webb saying I needed to pay $200 for the broken window or do 20 hours of community service. The fact that I was getting punished for breaking a window to see my dying mother made me so angry, I threw the letter across the room. Isabella's mom said she'd help me fight it, but I was too tired to care anymore. That night I was going through Mom's stuff and found an old voicemail on my phone from 2 weeks ago that I'd never deleted. She was reminding me about a dentist appointment, and at the end she said love you in that casual way moms do when they don't know it might be the last time. I played it over and over until I had it memorized, and then saved it in 3 different places on my phone and backed it up to the cloud twice. The principal sent an email to all parents that night trying to cover everything up. He blamed what he called the incident on a technical error with the intercom system and claimed Miss Vexler couldn't hear the announcement properly because of static. The lie was so obvious that even parents who weren't there started asking questions on the school Facebook page. Parents were demanding to know why the door was locked and why multiple phone calls were ignored if it was just an intercom problem. 6 days after Mom died, the district finally announced that Miss Vexler had been placed on paid administrative leave while they investigated. She was still getting her full salary while I was picking out the cheapest casket I could find and trying to figure out how to write a eulogy. When I read the announcement in the hallway, Isabella had to physically grab my arms to stop me from punching the wall. The other kids from class were just as mad, and we all stood there in the hallway not saying anything because there wasn't anything to say that would make it better. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with an email from an address I didn't recognize. The attachment was a PDF file with 3 separate complaints against Miss Vexler from the past 5 years. Each one described stuff that made my stomach turn, like when she locked a kid with diabetes in the classroom during a medical emergency, or when she refused to let a girl call her mom who was having surgery. Every single complaint got the same result, which was either dismissed for insufficient evidence or Miss Vexler getting sent to some training workshop that obviously didn't change anything. I sat there staring at my phone screen feeling sick because Mom had died for nothing and this woman had been doing this for years. The next morning, Amy Gordon knocked on my door holding a folder and looking nervous. She worked for Child Protective Services and said she needed my help with Ellie's case because Mom had told her about concerns she had. Ellie was staying with an emergency foster family now after everything came out about her home situation. Amy wanted me to write down everything Mom had said about Ellie and any times Mom had helped her or noticed the bruises. I spent 3 hours writing down every detail I could remember, like how Mom would pack extra lunches knowing Ellie wasn't eating at home, or how she taught Ellie breathing exercises when she had panic attacks. Writing it all down made me realize how much Mom had been doing behind the scenes for kids who needed help. That afternoon, our whole class met at the community center where this older lady who was a notary was waiting with a stack of legal forms. Everyone had to write their own affidavit about what happened that day in the classroom. Anthony sat in the corner writing page after page about Mom and how she was the only adult who ever remembered his birthday and made him feel like he mattered. His handwriting was all shaky because he kept crying and having to stop. Maya wrote about the speech therapy Mom did with her for free every day after school. Even kids I didn't know that well had stories about Mom helping them with homework or giving them rides home when their parents forgot to pick them up. The notary kept having to take breaks because she was getting emotional reading all these statements from teenagers about this one woman who had changed their lives. By the time we finished, there were 43 sworn statements about what Miss Vexler did and about who Mom really was. Meanwhile, Zelda Vasquez, who was this reporter that had been following the story, filed a Freedom of Information Act request for all the records from that day. She wanted the intercom logs to prove the principal really did call for me and the thermostat control records to show when shelter mode was activated. She explained that these requests usually took weeks or sometimes months, but sometimes they produced smoking guns that changed everything. I was learning real fast that justice moved way slower than grief. The billing department at the hospice called me in for a meeting about Mom's final expenses, and I walked into this tiny office filled with papers and numbers that made my head spin. The